Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. Hi, and welcome back to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, and I'm very excited today to welcome Dr. Mark Romano. He's a naturopathic physician and founder of Barefoot Living Arts, a regenerative health practice rooted in nervous system resilience, classical Chinese medicine, and the healing intelligence of nature. His work bridges modern neuroscience, fascia research, and somatic medicine with ancient wisdom traditions, helping people reconnect to vitality through breath, movement, and meaning. As a certified Shenzhen Qigong teacher, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing incorrectly, you can correct us later, Dr. Romano guides patients and communities through practices that cultivate emotional regulation, connective tissue health, and deeper belonging. His workshops, including Breathing with Trees and Rooted Strength, invite people to see healing not as fixing symptoms, but as restoring relationship with self, body, community, and the living world. So welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today, and I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm looking forward to seeing what we discuss and what we bring to the world. So thank you.
You're welcome. And before we go ahead and get into the topic of today, which we kind of played around with this idea on talking around grief and connective tissue and introducing your work through that lens. Before we do that, I would love to first say I've really enjoyed getting to know you as a friend and colleague. We've been connecting recently. I live near where your practice is in Fairfield, and I've loved sending patients to you and experiencing your work. And I'd love for you to share how you found naturopathic medicine and how you're here, because I got to hear that in our conversations together, and I think listeners would appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed meeting you also and listening to your podcast, which I enjoy. So it's fun to be on.
Thank you.
I love how you lay out information and you share it with the public. It's a great platform for people and for other doctors also.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, the naturopathic story, right? It's always the story of interest of how we get there, because it's not that mainstream is it's like you don't just think it finds you and you don't find it.
Yeah.
I tell a story different every time I tell it. But I kind of fell into the fitness world. I was a football player, got injuries. I like to spend time in the gym. When I came out of undergrad with an exercise physiology degree, I thought I'd go into real estate or building. And then all of a sudden, personal training actually kind of took off. And I really enjoyed the one-on-one connection, which I didn't even know was a thing. So those one-on-one bondings with people was something I was like, oh, I like this. My parents were in commission sales, and so we grew up with goal setting and thinking ahead and trying to create narratives for the future. So the weight training and then weight loss that I tended to specialize in, helping people change how they saw themselves and who they wanted to be was really an exciting thing to invoke in others. So with the personal training, that took off. I met a chiropractor who had Crohn's disease, and he liked me. He wanted me to take over his business. So I looked into chiropractic. But because he had Crohn's disease and it seems like adjustments weren't solving every problem, I thought there had to be other things to do. So that's when Gary Null was in the world, and he said this word naturopathy. I'm like, what is that? So I looked it up, and And in Yoga Journal, which I was kind of practicing yoga at that time, they said there was a
Yeah.
school starting in Connecticut. So my wife being from New Jersey, we were living in Pittsburgh at the time. Bastyr and other schools seemed too far away. So
Hmm.
I went to naturopathic school. I had never met a naturopath. We just went to the school, talked to someone, signed the whatever, and I enrolled before I met a naturopath or even knew what it was. It just sounded good.
Yeah.
Um,
Same. I hadn't met one
that's
either.
amazing. It's a great,
Hmm. Just
just
knew
jump in.
that's the thing I've been looking
Right.
for.
This, yeah, yeah,
I love
yeah. So
that.
then that's where I kind of jumped into UB and started my exploration of I guess natural healing, or just really healing in a different way, or even different
Yeah.
ways to look at the body.
Now, you weren't participating in Qigong at that point, or you hadn't looked into Chinese medicine yet, or had you?
No, not at all. So in the fitness world,
Okay.
I ran a club, so I had found that if I taught classes, I could get more personal training clients for my company. And so the fitness classes were taking off. It was a lot of step aerobics at that time. Um, But
Okay.
at the personal training conferences, there was a guy who did Tai Chi, but it was like fitness Tai Chi. And I played with that, and it felt different. And it kind of like made me think
Mm.
maybe there was something else. But in naturopathic school, I got Lyme disease. And so it really changed how I saw health and how I could work with my body and recover my health. I think
Hmm.
I used my body as a vehicle to release stress, or maybe to create boundaries in the world that I felt strong in. And so with the
Hmm.
Lyme disease affecting my nervous system, I had to find ways to replenish. And that was different.
How do you think this is totally off topic, but I'm just
Sure,
curious.
no,
I can't help myself. How do you think the trajectory of that healing process would have been different had you not been immersed in this medicine at the time?
great question. You mean having Lyme disease, or just how I would handle? Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could answer that from two directions,
right.
right? You could kind of tell us a little bit about what was helpful for you in that healing process, but then also, I imagine that that created a very different, having access to those tools maybe created a very different healing process and a different than subsequent reality versus take an antibiotic for this and don't work with healing and don't work through maybe nervous system layers, or yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
interested in
It's,
that.
yeah, that, I guess that's a great question. I've never been asked that before. It's hard for me to parcel out, because the Lyme disease happened when I was in Connecticut. In Pittsburgh, I had not heard of Lyme disease. I was like, what is this? It was kind of a newer thing. So it was
Interesting.
like, not only was I a new person in a new place, but I had a new disease that wasn't, people in Pittsburgh couldn't relate to. And so they really couldn't help me
Mm.
solve the problem. So I did, being connected to the community and teachers, and being in school, did open my mind to other ways to heal it. Josh Berry, there were some naturopaths that were very much Lyme disease doctors, and it was kind of an interesting place to go and hear all the different things that were brand new at that time, and then experience them and
Yeah.
feel them, and then how to incorporate them
Mhm.
into my life, and then how to incorporate them into my practice eventually. Um, yeah, and I still have an interesting relationship with Lyme disease. We could talk about it later, but it's it,
Yeah.
it brings up a lot of what health is, and
Mhm.
even I felt like it was an existential kind of like, who am I? Because it was a time of my life that I was becoming something new. I was in the middle of school, so like I wasn't my old self, and I wasn't yet my new self. And I think that trying to ground myself in my new, I guess you could say, reality or personality was part of the healing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and very on topic for today,
yes,
and, thinking about transitions and loss and grief and change and times in life where in order for something new to come, something old has to go, and it's just the energetics of it. It's how it always is, right?
yes, yeah, and I think that that needs to be probably more clearly spoken in the word how like we're not
Mm.
fixing, we're evolving and changing and growing. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to talk about that. Like we're either growing or pruning. And then sometimes we have to repot. So it's like there's very interesting ways to, and you have to know
Yeah.
when to do what, and like it's a sensitive process because you don't want to hurt the organism, but you also don't want it to die on its own. So we
Yeah,
can,
for sure. And now, through your evolution as a physician and through your own healing, can you maybe just start to open up the conversation a bit around grief and loss and understanding that, and maybe even defining what it means to you and what it's meant to you in your life, and
yeah,
how, potentially it can be an obstacle to cure or part of the healing transition or both?
right.
So yeah, kind of go anywhere you want with a little bit of introduction to what that's meant
Yeah.
in your journey.
Well, my first patient in naturopathic school as a primary, so like the last year, was a
Yeah.
stage 4 cancer patient who I had met when
Mm,
I was a second, that was not a primary. And
yeah.
she
Yeah, I think we called
was
it
it a secondary?
secondaries too.
I
Yeah,
kind of
I think
forget. It's kind
so.
of
Yeah, I kind of forget too.
kind of a strange name when I say it out loud. Um,
There's been many transitions since then.
right. Um, and it was a very humbling because you learn all these different ways to like solve a problem, help people, take away their, help their symptoms, make them feel better. And there was really nothing I could do but just help her reflect on her life, take away, soften her pain, and just be there for her. Um,
Mhm.
her son was a chiropractor, interesting enough. So here I'm as a, hadn't graduated, yes, and he would come in and he would bring his children. So I'd be spending time with a doctor, a chiropractic doctor, the grandchildren and her, and we'd be discussing things that really hadn't been taught in school to really discuss, but just being a good human, being there for them. It was
Mhm.
pretty, and so I thought of myself, I thought it was going to be a wellness naturopath. Like I already had gyms set up, like I had the plan. I was going to just bring this to my already understanding of fitness and wellness and health. And, I was like, this is just going to, and
Okay.
so this was kind of like not in the plan. Um, I was
Yeah.
teaching a class in Westport at that time at a place called Chief Fitness. And I was building up our like clientele, and people knew me as like the fitness guy. And that was what I enjoyed. And then sidebar, here, my first patient is someone that I'm helping transition. Um, I mean, sadly and interesting enough, 2 years later, my mother was diagnosed with cancer like out of the blue. Like she had they found a
Mm.
tumor in her kidney, which I got a call on my like 32nd birthday that I had to rush to Pittsburgh. And at that point, she was my personal training client at one point. She had lost 130 pounds. So I had walked her through the different health realms, and that was
Mm.
probably some of my motivation to go back to school because and I probably unconscious that I wanted to be there for my family and learn as much as I could in a way of protecting and providing health
Mm.
information. So when that happened, it was a little. I had my
I love that, by the way. That's beautiful.
yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
if I knew that at the time, but I realize that
Yeah.
now. So when that happened, I had already had a daughter and my mother was sick, and I had somewhat of a um, like foreshadowing of how to be in the situation as I kind of helped my mother move on to or transition. Um, and I didn't expect that. That wasn't the plan. And so there I was again, instead of fixing or solving or helping someone be a better version of themselves, I was actually helping them transition. So that's like
Mhm.
slowly been a pulse in my life that I've just learned to accept. Uh, graduated.
What was your level of experience with the process of dying and being with someone at that and stages of dropping their body before that patient?
At that point, I'm from a big Irish family. I have 35 first cousins. My mother was one of
Wow.
11. There was only, out of that clan, which was probably around 40 to 50 people, we only lost one person at that point. Well, two,
Oh,
my
wow.
grandfather, but also my cousin was hit by a car when I was 18. And that
Mm.
rocked my world. And so,
Hmm.
but that was a different kind of experience of loss. And so, and how we handled that, the big Irish family coming together, being there for each other, it actually was quite a, it was a tragedy, but we bonded over that because it made us realize what was important. Um,
Hmm.
so that's, so that was in my, subconscious of like, what's the most important thing right now? And that was probably, I learned that at a younger age. So that's where I still
Yeah.
focus on.
Yeah. I think those major losses absolutely help you to appreciate, being in the moment and what you do have in front of you.
Yeah.
And it sounds like in both being with that patient and with your mom, you provided essentially that safe space of co-regulation and existence and acceptance of what is in that moment and not grasping or changing or fixing. And that being, that presence together is really powerful and special.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you said safe. I think that, that word is a really strong word and maybe not quite understood, but probably one of the most fundamental things for helping people heal or be a part of their healing or like, dropping into. And I th- yeah, so I definitely organize my practice around that idea. I mean, I know you've talked about
Mhm.
like polyvagal theory. That was a big deal when
Mhm.
that came out and understanding the importance of safety and being seen, heard, and cared for, and just holding that space before you give
Mhm.
someone something to do or something to fix. Like, and sometimes it takes longer than expected to create that experience of safety so that they're willing or able or to hear you to do the things you're asking of them. And
Yeah.
and sometimes they
This is so
yeah,
accurate.
yeah.
That resonates a lot.
And sometimes they challenge you in that space. Like they're like, it's almost like you
Mhm.
can feel like we're going back to like, right, how safe are
Yep.
you? If I do
Correct.
this, if I don't listen, if or not that listening's the thing,
Yeah.
but if I don't do the things that maybe would make me feel better, are you still there for me? Are you still able
Yeah.
to, am I still able to come to you and tell you about my struggles? And so, um,
Yeah. I'm glad you've named that. I don't think that that's something I've articulated out loud on any episodes.
okay,
And I do think, and again, it's kind of off the topic where I thought we'd go, but I think this is really an important conversation to have where I will say to a patient, the most important thing to me is that you feel safe and that we establish a therapeutic relationship. And that's why sometimes, or most of the time, I might be starting on the physical plane
right,
and I might be starting talking about physical tension or running labs because it's it's harder to go deeper and do all the kind of other layer work that we'll inevitably do without that container of safety. And there needs to be a little bit of a dance, right? Where I figure out what are they able to do, what are they willing, what are the obstacles to cure in mindset, even or belief around healing or grief, as we'll talk more about. So as you're weaving through that, if there's not safety and trust,
right,
I mean, how does that it doesn't even happen.
yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just a repetition after so many repetitions, spending times, conversation. You can feel the patient kind of
Hmm.
settle into like, oh, this person, they're just here for me. They're not attached to the outcome. They don't have,
Hmm.
some, the word agenda. They don't have an agenda. Like
Yeah.
my performance isn't tethered to like their self-esteem. And so they're like, oh, they're
Yeah.
just,
That's very
yeah,
important.
yeah, and then all of a sudden they just, then the conversation switches to like not what to do or why you're doing it. It's like, who do you want to be? Like, maybe who
Mm.
are you? And like, who do you want to be? And like, are you creating a lifestyle or habits that are centered around that beingness? Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I find that's very meaningful. And yeah, and working with people when they're like they have a strong diagnosis and maybe the outcome is not really that what they want to hear, they can still focus on that. Like, who do you want to be going through this process, right? How do you want to show up? What's important to you? What do you value? And then we can start there. So.
Yeah. And I think when we think about transitions, especially especially in the population I work a lot with, right? Like perimenopause and menopause, and really any, I think, major loss in life, there comes a moment through that healing process where you have to kind of reorganize and answer that question of who do you want to be a little bit differently. Like that is essentially what it's asking of you, because things have shifted and changed.
Right.
And I think it's always important to come back to that. Are your daily health choices aligned with who you want to be through this transition, and as these things are changing in life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think some of the tension around, like, maybe you have an idea of who you are, but your life isn't in line with that. That creates the different things like pain or disease or, autoimmunity. All the things start to show up because you're just not in alignment with yourself.
Yeah. So talk more about that, a little, maybe more about what's physiologically happening there, whether it's, the biology or physiology of grief, or even just how do you see not being in alignment, let's say with maybe soul purpose, or however you might talk about that with patients. How do you see that show up physically? And you could go anywhere with that. There's many physical. Yeah, the lots of answers there.
Yeah, and I guess maybe like there's alignment, or also you could say in relationship to self and attachment theory, which I believe you've talked about on this podcast. I didn't really
some, probably not enough yet, but some.
Yeah, I didn't realize how important that was to help people feel safe, and how that comes into the doctor-patient relationship, and then also how that's being portrayed in the world. And so that pain or that tension, they call protest. So and even I know you talked to Dr. Rapkins about feelings, like how feelings come to the surface, in that how we're maybe taught to suppress those feelings, but in a way those feelings are where the tension lives, and that tension tells you if you're in the right relationship with yourself and the environment. So it's like changing the conversation from your pain or what's going on to like your positioning is an interesting kind of, and that takes some patience, and with patients to like help them experience that. But yeah, so I think I've less focused on the pain that my patients are feeling, which I totally acknowledge and treat and take care of, but also maybe the positioning of how they got there, from body alignment to how we imagine ourselves and our vision of how things should be and how they are, to all those different, like how we're acting and behaving, and how we think things should be. All those tension points, they come into conversation with, to make big changes, we have to like figure out like where the value systems are, I guess.
Yeah, and because I've worked with you before as well, I know that I think you have a very unique skill in that you're essentially doing some psychological work and having these conversations with people as you also maybe are doing acupuncture or have your hands on them. So you're bridging the connection between where you might feel tension, and whether, I'm sure patients that you're going to articulate that to or not. Maybe you're just silently doing your work, but also maybe you're engaging in a conversation around that. And so I find that that's unique, in that patients haven't always had that co-regulation at the same time as bridging the connection between what's going on in their mind and their body, and kind of feeling and then talking it through. I think that's very extremely helpful in many healing processes.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the Qigong, it's called Shenzhen. Like how you move is how you feel, is kind of how you position yourself in the world. So like I love my dogs. And so my dogs tell me how they're feeling just when they walk in the room. They don't say anything. So their physical structure tells me a lot. And so I think it's really important for people to like they're showing up already expressing without saying a word, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about how they're handling themselves in their relationships. And so that story, or even that realization that their posture, their positioning is already decided, they've already decided how things are before they've even entered into the relationship or conversation. So changing that and empowering them. So yeah.
Now, are you pointing out some of those patterns to patients as you get to know them? You know, you're doing your scanning of environment and assessing. Now, are you articulating that and kind of guiding them through how to do that themselves?
Yes, I'd like to think I am. So they come in, I take their pulses and I tell them a pattern. At the same time, we're discussing their problem in their life. And then we together formulate a story that makes sense based on their symptoms and how they're feeling and how their body's showing up. And then hopefully make some inways on some new habits or new things they could do. And so, yeah, I think like, I was taught that to change the body, you have to change the breath. To change the breath, you have to change the energy, change the chi. To change the energy, you have to change the heart, how you feel. There's some studies like if you are running and you're frowning and you're just reinforcing that life is hard. And so even though you're trying to be better as a physical body, your nervous system is getting the signal like life is hard. So you're programming into your physiology that working out is hard, but I have to do it. So if you ran and you were smiling and you were happy, you're kind of like teaching yourself life is easy and running is easy. So like, I feel like there's a big disconnection in those two, in that understanding that like how we behave is how we are. And we're reinforcing behavioral patterns just by, maybe attitude.
And how much power that
So
has.
much power. So much power. And I think it's empowering too. And
that you have control over it.
Yeah, my Qigong teacher will constantly, Li Zhongfen will constantly say, be happy, or like show happiness. Like you have to bring it to the surface to remind yourself. You could say, gratitude, or just like remind yourself that you have that possibility and that's there. That it changes the biochemistry, it changes the physiology, and it's not something, it's not small.
No, and it's not easy, right? Especially if you're in a lower season or you have experienced loss or going through grief, and it's hard to walk around. And many times I have this conversation. I had it yesterday with a patient. It's hard to find the joy, right? Midlife is a time where a lot of people are struggling finding joy.
Right.
And I said to her, you've worked with me for a very long time, so you're going to think this is a really simple explanation. And then we did go on to do other things, but I said, we need like a little book of joy. I have one at home, a little book where I open it up and there's a passage or a thing to do. And it just, we got to plan the joy. We got to force the joy for a little bit, and then it will come, more readily, because you will smile and you will engage and you will relate, or, call a friend might be one of the tasks. So you'll find some of the joy. So I did then also, which I think you could really appreciate, we were talking a little bit about what she's meant to do kind of with the second half of her life, and some of the patterns and reprogramming she's worked on. And, she was saying, I've worked through all of these things and I still feel just tense and hypervigilant all the time. And I said, are you getting on the floor with yoga blocks?
Right.
She said, no. So we just, laid down on the floor and we did a little heart opening and then a little psoas release. And then that essentially is what she's going to go home and do a little meditation on this second half of life goals, without, giving too many details about her life. So there is that. Then, her heart is open in that position and she's energetically receiving and planting seeds for where she wants things to go. And all of a sudden you feel better. She doesn't feel as stuck and as constricted. And so I think it's really important to yes, be intentional about it, and also recognize that that's not always the easiest step to start doing those things. So sometimes it requires a little bit of, reminder, or, just a routine, a regulation routine maybe that you're doing every day to get the body into that position, and then have that impact on the breath and then everything else down the line.
Right. Yeah. I'm a big fan of cognitive neuroscience and how they're starting to explain maybe Eastern philosophy and how meditation and things work. There's a book called Better in Every Sense. I don't know if you got a chance to, but
I don't know
it's,
it. Thank you for the recommendation, though. I'm going to check it out.
and it's really good. They talk about the default mode network, and they thought that when you dealt with depression, so the default mode network being that like how we see ourselves, and we have this like running program of, and we can't reinvent the day every day. It's like we need some stabilization of how we drive to work, how we brush our teeth, how we do things. But they had believed that maybe during depression that would get amplified. And what they found that it didn't change. And it caused a lot of like challenges in like, well, maybe we don't have a good model of what depression is. So it took them about a year or so to figure out that what changed was not the default mode network, the ability to sense new information. So the way to solve your pattern of, like you were just saying, the way to solve your pattern of when you're stuck in a mental loop or how you see the world is to bring in new sensory information. So feel the yoga block, go outside, smell a new smell, to have a new conversation, travel. So when you open up your senses and then you create new patterns in that sensory world, then you change your default mode network. So touch and like movement and breath and change. So it's that trying to get people to go back to like trying some new habit, sensory habit that will change how the narrative they have about themselves. So it's, I think we're starting to understand, and even meditation, it doesn't turn off the default mode network. It just creates a little space between your known self and your unknown self. So maybe you have a little more time to choose. And that's a big deal. Like
it's a huge deal.
Right.
I mean, this is what I talk about every day. Like, we need you meditating or breathing or some form, right? Like walking in nature. It doesn't have to be so scary and complicated.
Right. Yeah. No, sometimes mind wandering is actually like, it's not, you don't go right to turn off your mind. Like just stop the input of information coming in, let your mind wander. And after a while, I mean, that's a great thing.
And feel safe with that. Many people don't feel safe at all in their mind or body.
And we're having less of that now because we have a lot of information we can always be on. And then you can focus your mind maybe on breath or things like that. But you can't go from information to focus. Sometimes that's too hard. And it's hard to go from information to nothing. That's a lot for people. That's almost, it can create even too much stress on the system. So it's like learning how to like help people negotiate those different stages with permission and safety. I think it's exciting what we're learning. I love what we do.
I love geeking out on the research of on psychedelics and the default mode network. And a lot of the work I'm doing kind of psychologically with patients through transitions and transformations is working on some of that rewiring and some of that neuroplasticity and utilizing, like you're saying, inputs and nervous system regulating habits to also then reframe and rewire that, kind of ego relationship.
Right. And like, even just to go with like the patients you see or people grieving, is like, they don't have a program. They don't have a default mode. They don't have an idea of how to deal with this. And, or they don't have enough space to bring in new information. So that's.
Well, we also, as a society, we don't talk about grief and loss and death. And we don't talk about these uncomfortable things. We don't read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. We're not, engaging with regular practices or conversations that help us process grief, and then also that help us prepare for not only our own, dropping our body, but of those around us, and being comfortable with that. I personally find, though, that those albeit sad, and not to minimize the loss of that person, but I have walked some patients through that transition, and it's been some of the most beautiful, meaningful, just life altering experiences for me, because being in that space with someone is so real and authentic if you allow it to be and just are there with it. And so, yeah, I don't know. It's just a thing we're not comfortable with, though, most of the time.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah. 100%. It is. Yeah. Real and authentic. And there's unknown. It's like the acceptance of the unknown, that like you can't fill in with what you do know, and no one can actually occupy that space. So I think just accepting that unknown, you can only hang out in the present. You can only talk about what's of value, or focus on what's of value, because the future is not as clear as we'd like it to be, or the plan. And that's, the midlife thing. I feel like there's this vision of, there's this trajectory, and then all of a sudden, I'm not sure if I know the next vision or the next idea of how things should look. And do I have any models? I don't really, there's no models, or there's no thing to hold on to.
Yeah.
And that's freeing, but also could be very constricting and scary for people.
And even if there's not a major loss in that time period, there is very often a loss of like what you thought life would look like.
Right.
We're very good at creating stories in our minds, and when reality doesn't match up, that in and of itself is a loss and something to process sometimes.
Yeah, and that brings so the tension in the body would be in the connective tissue. Like we're going to talk about fascia. So the Chinese had a word, so they had the different spirits for different organ systems.
Yeah, tell us some more about that. I was hoping we could touch on that a little bit for listeners.
Yeah, and again, I try to make sense of Eastern philosophy with some neuroscience to make, just for my own head, to so it feels more tangible.
Yeah.
And
well, I think you're very much like me, where we both have very deep personal spiritual practices and mind body practices, and we might totally get something and feel it because of our practice. However, we also took an oath as physicians to do no harm, and we want to make sure that everything we're conveying is accurate and safe for a patient, and that when we're asking them to then do practices, or we're doing a practice to them as a physician, it's not just something we've kind of learned or experienced on our own, but it's also, I think, validated, and there's a lot of layers there, but I think you know what I mean.
Yes, no, I agree. Yeah, and there has to be the validity, and they have to feel safe. So I have to I want to explain in a way that they feel safe, right?
Yeah.
Because my experience, I don't assume that my experience is the same as theirs. They have a whole sensory body that's different than mine. Interoception, proprioception, exteroception, how the nervous system is bringing in information. The word interoception was a big deal, and it's maybe, I don't know, 10 years people talk about it. Not very long, 5 years.
Yeah, probably about that.
Yeah, so I study different things. So in the Rudolf Steiner anthroposophical medicine, he talked about this. There's 12 senses, and I was like, wow, 12 senses. That was amazing. And they taught that in the schools for the kids. But there was one sense called life sense, which is life sense. What is life sense? And he said, hungry, tired, thirsty, pain. And this is in 1920. So this idea that we have a sense of our body, which was something that, as a weight trainer and football player, I was given, I received merit by not feeling pain, by pushing through pain, by being able to throw my body around. And so to being able to listen to my body was a big deal. And really how Qigong helped me with Lyme disease, I had to reestablish a connection with my physical body. So it wasn't something, it wasn't happening to me. It was information oh, I can't work out hard today. It will deplete my adrenals, even though I could will myself to, but the benefit no longer fits, even though my mind could take me through the suffering, or whatever you want to call it. So I had to recalibrate that relationship, which you could say is interoception. And then the Chinese
self-knowledge,
right? Hungry, tired, thirsty, pain, just the sensory experience of having a body, right? And the Chinese would call that's in the realm of the Po. So the Po is pretty much guess you could say lung, large intestine, the metal, but the connective tissue, all the things that are experiencing the outside world, right? So we breathe, right? Our sinuses, our connective tissue.
So it's essentially the interface of receiving the external world.
Perfect.
In both lung and large intestine, and then incorporating or integrating, and then also putting back out from internally. Is that accurate?
Well, it has to have exchange, right? It has to have give, just like a breath, just everything. So any stuck energy, like in school, learned that like low back pain and grief is the same word in Chinese medicine. So what is it? Like, that's not like, so like stuck, something that's stuck, something that hasn't moved through you. Like, so you're holding on to that you haven't let go. And that, that's where it kind of goes back to maybe, the breathing with trees idea, like there wasn't an exchange anymore. So you have this tissue that's now no longer able to exchange or feel or sense or grow. And without growth.
And isn't it crazy before you go onto the tree? Sorry,
no,
I try not to interrupt my guests.
No, please. I love our conversation.
But I know we're always like, it's kind of crazy how many, I'm sure you have this experience. I don't even need to ask first, but patients will so often just have an aha moment. If I start to explain, we might hold grief in our lungs, or just explaining what you just said around low back pain, or, grief that hasn't moved through you, they'll immediately connect a loss or a transitional period of their life with a symptom that started like unable to get a breath. And it's so obvious, the connection, when you start reframing it that way for patients. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then so you get, into like the fascial world of tensegrity, and like we're a three-dimensional pressure and temperature system that moves and it's dynamic. And then you all of a sudden, you don't want to feel something, or you don't want to sense something, so you constrict around it. And then the whole body has to like come to terms with those constrictions. And there's only so many constrictions you can take in before things start working improperly. So, and then the why behind that, or I don't think anyone suppresses things on purpose. They do because that's what they need to do at that moment.
Well, we might choose to numb or escape, or like, so therefore that essentially is indirectly suppressing. Even if we're not consciously choosing suppression, we are embodying suppression by not, allowing it to move through, essentially.
Yeah, and I think if you make the environment safe enough, and there's enough relationships that are supportive, that whole, like that rat, the rat village idea with the addictions. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes.
Yeah.
Right. The rats in the cage, they got addicted to cocaine, but they were alone in a cage with no friends, no other rats, nothing to do. But then you put them in a village, and they're like, they didn't have the same addiction. They didn't need those suppressions or something to numb or distract them, because they felt connected. And
they could get their dopamine elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's the word. That's the dopamine suppression, right? So that's that pain that we're trying to not feel. But when we move into that curiosity of like what's on the other side of that pain, and that you could handle it, and then you have enough energy.
Well, that's key, right? Because that's the precipice of, I don't think I can handle this, and this is going to kill me, and I can't survive this, and this hurts, and all the things. But when you get through it, that's the magic of, oh, wow, I survived that. And unfortunately, life is not going to stop giving you painful experiences. So the next one is going to be easier because you know that you did it. But it's the getting through it and getting through the harder ones, and finding that support that helps through that process.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about, I know you were about to start on the breathing with trees when I interrupted you. So I know you shared a story around, having a tree that you had a relationship with and meditated with and breathed with. And I'm not sure if that aligns exactly in your timeline of when you maybe lost your mom or not, but I just imagine that would be a good exercise if someone is going through a transition process or a loss or a grief. And from letting nature hold us to there's so many reasons why the nervous system regulation piece, maybe you're not ready to feel support from a human yet, or you're not ready to name your grief. And so you can just get it from a tree. Like, I don't know where you want to go with that, but tell us some more just around the breathing with trees, what that means to you, what it means for you.
Yeah, it means a lot. I mean, I always felt a respite in nature, and I don't know if I understood why. And I kind of trust my feeling and then try to figure out later. It's a good thing, but also interesting thing. But in this book I had just referenced that better in every sense. They use a term which is amazing because it fits into what I understand. It's called sense foraging, which is like,
I like
isn't that amazing?
I'm pretty sure I'm a sense forager.
But what nature does, and especially trees, is like they mimic and they show there's constant change and evolution that's happening regardless of how we're trying to hold on to our known knowns, and like we think things should be a certain way. You got it in nature, and like nature has its own intelligence, and trees, like, limbs die and new buds come and trees fall down and those create new trees. It's like there's a built-in cycle of life that is bigger than us, that almost reminds us that we're help us to remember that we're part of something bigger. And it can hold, I believe, especially for me in the different groups I've worked with, like it holds a different level of conscious that we can just all relax into, and we can share. It's like, it's probably beyond words. It's more archetypal, or maybe generational, that like, and the relationship we have with trees and oxygen and breathing and how important that is, and how they're always omnipresent for us is pretty amazing. So, yeah, I've done some grief groups at a place in Utah called Sticks and Stones, and the space itself allows people to just kind of relax into something, feel safe in a way, right? They feel safe. And so then that
and probably
held, and it's all, they're used to that environment. So there's a level of safety that's kind of, they remember the trees, they remember the situations, they have memories from their youth. So it kind of, and then we can kind of be human in that. So, and there's a lot of metaphors you can play with, like I said, like growing or pruning or repotting, and root systems and fascia, and then the leaves with like mitochondria, like that I like are good.
That's why my practice name is Roots Deep Medicine.
Yes,
like, I can go so many ways.
Right. Because we just have to remember that part, right? Because we could think we're just ahead with some thoughts and information, and also like, oh no, there's this other thing that's like we're probably more a part of than we realize. And that's why I try to point people back in that direction.
For sure.
So
yeah, little different aspect of nature, but I like, in times of loss in my life, to give grief to the ocean. So although we do live near the Sound, and nothing against the Sound, I don't find the Sound can hold my grief fully. So I do actually try to go to an ocean when I'm processing something heavier, but similar to what we just talked about with trees, I find it's something bigger than myself. There's an energetic flow that I can be kind of rocked and soothed by, and I know that it can handle whatever it is that I have to give up to it, and I can also just be silent in the healing presence of it. So I think everyone can find their place in nature that can hold that loss or hold them through a transition in a really powerful way that doesn't require much effort other than just going and finding your place that you like to be.
Yeah, and back to that word sense foraging, just like bringing your senses out of yourself into a dynamic system like the ocean, right? So it's like it has its own energy, its own rhythm, its own cycle, and you can't hold it. You can just experience it because the waves are always changing, right? The wind is changing, so you realize, and so that helps us reshape in those times of change, and just like.
I find it's also sometimes helpful for patients that have a harder time, like laying down on a mat and feeling into their body, and working on releasing and emotions, sometimes it is easier to be in the energetics of nature and then noticing the distinction between and maybe practicing some interoception. What is outside of me? What is inside of me? Can I even feel a little bit of that craniosacral fluid in me and how it's different from the wave or different from the solid sense of the tree? So it can be an interactive experience where you're learning about internal sensation through external input from nature, sitting in the sun. There's a lot of ways that you can do it.
Right. Yeah. I think, just opening up the senses. And motion creates stillness. Stillness creates motion. So within those two dynamics, I tried to do yoga, but I was always doing I guess ADHD yoga. I needed to move more.
Well, okay. I was like, what does that mean to you?
Well, it's Qigong, I guess. So it's rhythmical motion. So once I found a way to be rhythmical in nature,
right.
I was like, oh, my nervous system can calm down within this rhythm. The holding poses were I needed to move more. I needed a little more space. So and everyone has their own neurological needs and their different things that they
you need a nice vinyasa or maybe some power yoga.
Or maybe I was like a movement baby you had to put in the car and put to sleep, something like that. So I just need motion, and if whatever that is for you, but extending yourself, like my teacher says, become with the universe. And I'm still trying to figure out what that means, but I think it means listen. Just listen. Just extend your listening in every aspect, whatever you can. And then come back. And when you come back after listening, you have a chance to recalibrate. So that's what I think.
Yeah. And even the process of just sitting, we've talked about this before. I love to be alone. I sit by myself a lot. But I recognize that not a lot of patients do that or want to do that when they first come in. So it is a little bit of education around why we're doing that, as we just spoke about earlier. But the process of just being with self and with how tight do you feel? Where do you feel like you're holding things? What comes up in your mind? That without safety is impossible, right? But that is what allows the breath and then the energy movement and then the healing. And if you think to, some of the conversations I just actually recorded on the podcast myself around the vis and around, the healing power of nature, I try to link that back and explain to patients when you're able to get quiet and do maybe what you and I might do if I'm doing craniosacral with my hands on a patient, or if you're doing acupuncture or hands-on work with a patient, if they're able to accomplish that still point and that listening, that is what, in my opinion, not necessarily turns on the vis, but allows it to do what it's been trying to do when we're not restricting it, holding it back, controlling it, right? We're letting the flow of it occur.
Right.
So there's something really hard about that for some patients, but then that's the place that they inevitably kind of need to go the most, is being in that listening space.
Right.
Which it sounds so simple. It's I need you to go sit down and listen.
Right.
It was not simple at all.
Yeah, and it's that's also where the unknown is. Right. So you
right.
And that's you don't have control of that.
That's scary.
But I think that's where the healing happens, is that there's this, that space in between. And that's where I guess that's the dance we do with people to help them feel safe enough to be in the unknown, at least a little bit, so that they can grow and change. Because you can't, if you don't have an unknown, all you can really do is prune. You keep trying to fix a system that maybe you've outgrown your pot. Your root system is not going to work. So we have to figure out where's the growth. And
you hold that container for patients very well. I'm here, you're safe. So now let's repot you safely, and you are going to grow, and I'm here, and it's okay. And it might feel scary, but I got you. I'm going to sprinkle that soil on that loose root over there, and we're going to get you safe. And it's really important.
Yeah. And I think we could just go back to growth maybe just be dopamine, right? So if we're outsourcing all of our dopamine to things that don't actually help us grow and so we get these big hits, but we don't have any association of we don't create any neuroplasticity from these big hits. We just kind of get,
Yeah.
our reward systems change and our motivation changes, and we stop listening to, like, our taste buds become maybe in a way numbed down. Like, you can't
Mm-hmm.
taste the difference between an organic tomato and like a non-organic tomato, because we
Yep.
need to like purify those systems. So yeah, there's a lot of things that naturopathy, homeopathy, herbs do to help people sense their bodies again. I know you're like
Mm.
fixing their
Mm-hmm.
gut, detox. Like, they're not, I think they're so important because the information can't come in clearly, people can't assimilate it,
Totally.
and then they can't reestablish a new norm.
Yep.
So,
I always
okay,
say, how can we're not processing our emotions if we're not pooping. So
I agree. I,
that's a little simplistic, but
I mean, yeah, but it's true, right? Because it's, yes, yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I could tell you stories, but, yeah, some of my, yeah, maybe I will tell a story. Like, one of my patients, she's probably on record, and she thought this was a norm, and it was like 11, 12 days that she could go.
Mhm.
And, but her family medical history, the history of her life, like, she's such a good holder, strong woman, amazing.
Yeah.
But her experience of her body is not, is very, she's learned to numb it. And the
Yeah.
cost of that is, because I see her children, she's not actually able to be there for the people she loves as much, because when you're holding,
Yeah.
you can't feel, right? So like, that's the
Mhm.
cost, right? So it's, and then like, you might position yourself in a place that really is not as of much value to yourself or the people that you care about, because you're holding so hard to not feel.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting, yeah. So yeah, please poop.
Well, please do release
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting too if you think about like a stress response and how acute grief can raise cortisol. So there's lots of studies on this, and like a really sad one with kids, but if you want to go down the rabbit hole of studies, acute grief will raise cortisol, but then prolonged grief, you're going to have kind of dysregulated cortisol curves or blunted morning cortisol. So then you can even go a step further and look at, I love to talk about pregnenolone and how it relates to sex hormones. But if you think about the inflammation process, the HPA axis, and cortisol, and how when we're responding kind of chronically to grief, and now it's impacting all of those pathways, our immune system. And then on top of it, you're also holding physically and then not emotionally connecting. Well, I could name 20 chronic physical, mental, emotional diseases that all stem from that. So I think maybe grief is not the right word, or loss is not the exact right word, but yes, like transitions and changes and the way that we physiologically are responding to that is the root cause of many issues that we see show up. And so my long rant ending now, point being, how do we, if someone's listening and this is resonating, and you can give an example of how you might do this with a patient, but how do we start that unburdening process? And I know that safety, right, might be step one, like make sure you feel safe, but can you give us even more concrete practical applications for someone who's numb or stuck or still grieving or overwhelmed? Or it could be a daily practice, it could be find a practitioner who does this. Where are you drawn to in your mind when I ask that question, is like, what can people do first to start unburdening from this?
It's a great question. I like the idea that despair is a lack of imagination. So,
Hmm.
it's not imaginal. It's not a fantasy. It's imagined. So like, we need to invoke an idea of what we can imagine our life to be, to like
Mhm.
pull our senses towards growth and change. And so, I mean, there's some people writing, painting, being in nature, being around anything that brings you out of yourself so you can start to experience something differently.
Mhm.
That you enter this unknown that could start to come into your life. Um, I mean, nature is definitely, I think, my favorite place. Art is really important, like creativity. And like, even like in a conversation, like I enjoy talking to you because I don't know what we're going to say. Like there's this third.
I know. We said things today I didn't think we'd talk about.
Yeah,
so
I love there's this third space of like, I don't know. And so like you start to teach yourself that you don't know in any way that you can, and you start to teach yourself to listen. Even with us.
Which also that in and of itself, like if I say to a patient, which I've said before, we're going to do something like that. We're going to, find something that you want to do that maybe is creative, and we're going to schedule it for next week and going to help you get out of this depression, for example.
Right.
So that also is training them to be able to deal with the scary, unsafe feeling too,
Right.
which then will be applied to the growth process of whatever it is causing them that despair. Let's say it's a loss and not just like a physical root cause. So I think that's interesting that has a kind of we're all about efficiency here because we can only get people to do so many things at one time, but it's a multi-layered.
Yes. I mean, if they try a supplement and they learn that they feel better or they don't feel better, that it changed their digestion, it didn't change their digestion, the conversation is now started. If they take a class and they don't like the class, or they do like the class, they now are having a conversation about what they need. So like we're in the mode of like starting to discern the differences, and then we can start to mold from there. It's hard when people do nothing. And that's why I still have an affinity to, like, I'm in the sportsplex, and like when there's movement, it's easier to help people. Like if you're just sitting on your couch in the same, like it's hard to create movement when there's stagnation.
We say stagnation is the breeding ground of disease.
Yeah, so do something and learn from it, and then decide who you are, who you want to be from it, I guess is the thing. So, but I think that's what naturopathy has, a lot of tools that we like, from the wet socks to the castor oil to the,
I've been talking about the wet socks lately.
Yeah, like even like the ice baths, if you're doing that, like what are you learning? Are you feeling better? Are you feeling worse? How is that working for you? Like start to develop that. My Qigong teacher was a bit like he would never say this is the way you do it. It's always like it depends on the person, their structure, their physiology, their flavor. He would say everyone has their own flavor.
I love that. That's so true.
You need to know your flavor, and that's how you're going to express this movement. And then that's the art, to like figure out that positioning. So so that's what I enjoy doing.
And it's, again, I'm always coming back to self-knowledge and learning self. And many times the first time a patient shows up in my office, that hasn't necessarily been something that they've explored, whether it's physical self or, their inner world, whatever that looks like, and depending on what we're working on. So it's all part of that self-learning, self-healing, because very much what you do as well with education and teaching patients and groups is, yes, you have your hands-on work, and yes, I have my one-to-one work with patients, but also you're planting seeds of teaching them how to learn self and heal at home and heal others then and teach others. And I just love that.
Thank you. Yeah, no,
you're welcome. Well, I know it's been about an hour, so I appreciate your time is really valuable as well. And so I know we need to wrap up soon. Before we do so, is there anything that you want to add, maybe what working through, some of these transitions in your life has taught you about healing, or anything we haven't talked about? And then I'll have you tell listeners where they can find you and what's coming up for you. And I know you do local events. You're in Fairfield and I'm in Westport with our practices, so we're close by. And so I feel like we might have some listeners that would be really interested to get to know more about your work and where they can find you too. So.
Yeah, no, this has been a great conversation. We've covered different things and than I expected, but also covered the things I think that were important, so that I wanted to convey. I did, like, I had different quotes I like to share when I learn.
Yeah, please.
I think the best part of our profession is I get to learn something, and then I get to share it with people, and then have that conversation. There was a guy at the conference that talked about it like that. So you can work out the ideas and then present them and see what feedback. But I like this quote.
Was it Dr. Shore? Was it
Dr.
the placebo
Dr.
talk?
Shore, he said that. He's like, yeah,
Yeah, he's the best. I need to get him to come on here too. That would be so
yeah,
cool.
I like that guy.
Yeah, that was a great
Yeah,
talk.
yes.
Yeah, so basically we get to be dorks for life and learn forever
Right.
and then help other people with our learning.
Right.
And I'm sure that
And we're
is,
all learning
just
together, right? It's
makes,
like, I tried this, try that. Like,
yeah.
we can, but this quote is, nothing is what brings something into focus. And that's what I learned with working people with grief when they lose someone. Like, it's that void at that space that they were so used to going to. And like, it takes a good year to sit in that void to realize who that person was and what's missing. And if we can take that concept with us in a lot of ways, just create that nothingness so we can bring into focus what's important. And there's many ways to do that. But it's,
that like made me start to cry a
yeah.
little because it just, it of course makes me think about major losses in my life and that process of being with that nothingness and trying to avoid it, trying to numb it, trying to run from it. Then, okay, I got to be with it. And what does this new life look like?
Yeah, and we can be with other people in that nothingness, but it's a unique experience that we're having, right? It's the same but different. And I feel like grief brings that to the forefront. Like something's different now. It's undeniably different. We can't use the same reward system to get that. It's not here. So we start to like feel that despair and like let go of that rigidity so that something new can come in. And like it's pretty important for all sorts of different ways of healing and actually being human. Probably it's important.
Being human, yeah,
it's a part of
all of the human things.
It's a part of life, yeah, that we undeniably.
Yeah.
So
I use the line a lot, which I'm sure you've heard me say in an episode, of experiencing life fully human and deeply healed. Because I do mean fully. I do mean the highs and the lows and the dark and the light and the loss and the joy. And I know that the biggest losses, whether it's of people or places or things that didn't happen in life, the the darker, deeper, harder times also are what highlight the memories of joy that I got from that person or place. And I can still feel it. Like that doesn't go away. I always have that inside of me. And again, it just highlights that moving forward, when I'm able to pause and be mindful and be in a minute really truly with a person or a place or an experience, because I know what it's going to feel like when that's not there anymore. That to me is like, that's fully human, conscious life and existence. And it's it's the sweetness of life that I don't think I could articulate with words, but I don't know that I would be able to taste it or sense it without the losses I've had. Personally, I think I needed those to teach me that. I don't know if everyone's that way, but yeah.
It seems they are. And that's beautiful.
Seems maybe.
Yeah, it does seem, yeah, that's beautiful. I totally agree what you said there. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, of course. So tell us where we can find you. And if you're so inclined to do a brief ending guiding practice, you're welcome to. If you want to just say, come find me for that, you're welcome to do that too. Take that open opportunity as you see fit. I just think you're very skilled in those.
So there is it's called the Zongtian Niji, the Union of Three Hearts meditation that I showed at the conference. And I've used it with from kids to all sorts of different people. And I used to do a lot of heart math, and it was like because I needed that validation myself, because I felt it, but I wanted other people to feel it. But you bring your palms up and you blow into your palms, and the breath into the palms kind of extends your awareness to your hands, which there's a lot of information, and you feel that breath. And then your right hand, which is symbolically the earth connecting to the ground, goes right below your navel. And then your left hand comes to your forehead. And then you take a moment and find the center of your forehead, and you imagine a spark, a light. And then you bring that light, that spark, down through the center of your body, down through your heart center, and then down to your belly center. So the three hearts, the head, the center of the head, the center of the chest, the heart, and the center of the belly become one. So it's heaven on earth, and then we connect from the heart to each other, humanity. So that's something that's quite
Thank
powerful.
you.
You're welcome.
Listeners are going to say that was my favorite part of that, by the way, just so you know.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
So thank you very much for sharing
You're
that.
welcome.
And now I know you have a website, so maybe tell everyone your website and where they can find you and what you have upcoming at Barefoot Living Arts.
Yeah, so it's barefootliving.org is the website. We do monthly workshops. We're trying to get better. We were doing a monthly meditation. We're going to probably pause it for the summer. So we're doing a rooted strength workshop coming up in a couple weeks. And it's playing with embodiment, meditation, Qigong, and breathwork, just for the sake of really listening to our physical body to create that platform that we've been talking about, so that we can interface and understand. There's a practitioner in my office, Marika Baxter. She's a physical therapist, and she studies realization process. So she brings that in. And then I've been studying Shen-Jen meditation, which is also Qigong, for about 20 years. So I bring that in. But it's an invitation for people to feel at home in their body again, and then start there. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's really fun. And I think that listeners are going to love this conversation. So
Thank you, Kelly.
wow, I really enjoyed that conversation today. I think this is one of those conversations that stays with you, because what we explored is that grief isn't something we just move past. Transitions and loss are part of being human. And essentially, these are things that the body is trying to move us through. And when that process doesn't complete, it doesn't disappear, it gets held onto. And we hold it in our nervous system, in our body, in our patterns, our behaviors, our emotional styles. And over time, that does look like tension or fatigue or anxiety or being disconnected from ourselves. It can impact our hormones, inflammation, our immune response. So rather than trying to fix that, change that, push through it, numb it, our work is really creating enough safety to begin to feel again and to listen, as hard as that might be sometimes, and to allow something to move that may not have had the space to move through us before. So if something in this conversation resonated with you, just start there. Start with one of the simple practices we discussed, such as going outside and letting nature hold you and hold your grief and hold the chaos of a transition that you might be experiencing in life. And just notice how you feel, get curious, and create small amounts of safety in your body where you can. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode. As always, this podcast is here as a result of my work at Roots Deep Medicine and through the Vital Spirit Method. And so it can only grow if you recommend it to friends, share it, review it, download it, all of those things. So please do so if it's something that you've enjoyed. And I can't wait to have another conversation with you next week. Have a good day.